Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to a new best to worst list. And this is going to be the first of a two-part special best to worst list. This is ranking from my least favorite to favorite game on, in the first view, the 30 games in the Nes Classic, and then the second in the near future video will be ranking from, in my opinion, personally, weakest to best or worst to best of the SNES Classic. So with that said, keep in mind this is going to be based more on nostalgia factor more than anything. So with that said, we starting out with the NES Classic. Of course, I did not technically grow up with the NES Classic like a lot of people. My first personal console was the Sega Genesis. I played the original NES, and there are specific games and games that I played later on in compilations or digitally on things such as, well, the 3DS and other stuff thanks to the virtual. Only a small amount of these games have I actually ever owned, though in other shapes or forms. So with that said, starting off at number 30 is a game called Super C. I really don't have much to say about this game because prior to this video I decided to play a little bit of some of the games on here that I have personally actually never played, and that'd be about 6 or 7 of these games prior to putting this list together I had never actually played before. A lot of the ones higher up you're going to find will probably be, some of them will be arcade games, which is why they'll be higher. Coming in at 29 is a game called Star Tropics. Interesting game. Like the last one, this is one I never played until compiling this list. At 28 is Bubble Bubble, same again as the last two. But still, I can see a little bit of charm to the game. At 27 is a game I played in a compilation back in the past. A Tecmo compilation back in the past. 27 is called Tecmo Bowl, a football game from, the 8-bit era. Probably the best, though, 8-bit football game you'll find. Coming in at number 26 is one that, again, can play prior to this, though interesting. It's called Balloon Fight. Definitely different. Coming at 25 is one I have, at least I can say, played back in the past, though it's been quite a few years, played on my friend's original NES. At 25 is the original Metroid. Now keep in mind, I didn't really get into Metroid until really the reimagining first-person shooter era of Metroid with the Nintendo GameCube. That was really my introduction to Metroid, though I would go back years later and I would finally get my hands on Super Metroid for the Super Nintendo, and I must admit, I like it quite a bit. I'm still somewhat partial to Metroid on the GameCube, but with that said, I gotta admit, I love Super Metroid, but Metroid on the other hand, I'm really 50-50 on. 24, prior to this I had never played before, and the game is called Kid Icarus. At least I can say this is one of the games that I have actually heard of prior to this, though I know better for the 3DS game, and that plays very completely different than, of course, the NES Classic. Coming at number 23, I'm sure some people might be surprised or maybe not surprised. At 23 is a game called Mario Bros, though would actually originally come out on Atari, believe it or not, first. Not Nintendo. Actually predates Nintendo. It plays nothing like what we would become known as like the Super Mario Bros. Games. Mario Bros. Is a very different game. It's its own unique beast. Part of this, I've never played actually Mario Bros. 1 or 2. But yeah, Mario Bros. Comes at 23. Coming in at 22 is a game I think it's a little bit overhate personally. Coming at 22 for me is Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, which is a game I have actually prior to this. It's one I played in the compilation collection for the GameCube on. And honestly, I like the game. I don't know why I get so much hate. This is a game, actually, I probably will eventually get around to doing a full replay through of on the NES Classic. Just to see overall how it plays versus the GameCube port that I played prior. But I like it nevertheless. Coming in at 21 is game until this I had never played this game, though I have played many other games in the series. Coming at 21 is the original Castlevania, which I had never played prior. Actually, pretty much I never played any of the NES or Super Nintendo Castlevanias until these compilations. My first Castlevania game was on the original PlayStation with Symphony of the Night. That's probably why it's arguably my personal favorite game in the series of all time, and why I really appreciate Bloodstain series so much. But for me, I will admit that I kind of liked Castlevania a little bit, though I will say, after playing through, I definitely have come to respect the Super Nintendo Castlevania, or rather Super Castlevania. But with that said, coming at number 19 is the Hard as Nails game, which I can honestly say I have played prior to doing this at least. And yeah, this is arguably one of the hardest games in my opinion of all time I've ever played. At 19 is the original classic Ninja Gaiden, which of course would be one of the very first games ever involving, of course, Tecmo. And of course, the introduction to my all-time favorite video game ninja, of course, that being, of course, Ryu Hayabusa. Very well known in the DOA series. Coming in at number 20. Number 19 is a game that I never really got into the series for the most part, but 19 is Kirby's Adventure. It's okay for what it is. Coming at number 18 is Super Mario Bros. 2. Though technically this wasn't really originally a Mario game, that would be what would later on get released known as the Lost Levels, which I much prefer. Coming in at 17 is Super Mario Bros. 3. I know, heresy, right? But, to be fair, I never played Super Mario Bros. 3, or technically 2, until the Super Nintendo compilation known as, of course, All-Stars. Though, I can honestly say Super Mario Bros. 1, though, is the one that has the nostalgia factor, because I've actually played actual arcade machine of that game, and yes, it actually had actual machines. I would play at Pizza Hut back in the 90s. Great memories with that. Coming in at number 16 is a game I'm not sure what a lot of people's opinions are, but coming in 16th place for me personally is Dr. Mario. This is a game that actually I pretty much enjoy. Admittedly biased because I like those puzzle type games, similar to that of course, Tetris, which is like one of my all-time favorite game series. Coming at number 15 is an all-time classic, arcade classic, Gradius. Now, if you've ever played a lot of old-school classic arcade games, I'm sure you're no stranger to Gradius, but if you've never actually played the game, I do recommend it. See, that's how I played this game, was actually on an arcade machine, which I'm thankful for that. Growing up in the 90s, at least back when arcades were really doing well. Coming in at number 14, another game I would play occasionally in arcade. And that is a game called Double Dragon 2: The Revenge. Though the original classic Double Dragon is always a big thing, which is why I'm happy at least I have the Sega Master System port of Double Dragon 1. in my opinion, is probably the best home console port of the original game of that time period. But seriously, if you ever never really played the Double Dragon series, give it a shot. It's a true all-time classic series. I hold Double Dragon equally as high regard as the Streets of Rage series, and of course also the Final Fight series. I would probably put Double Dragon in the middle of the three series. Coming in at number 13 is, I'm sure, no stranger to anyone, another game that predates, in fact, the Atari. Or not the Atari, but predates the NES. Of course, that is the all-time classic Donkey Kong. Though I would play it originally in the arcade, and probably the closest you could get at the time to the arcade version would have been the Atari 7800 port. Though I never played that or the really bad downgraded 2600 version of the game. Still, Atari is great for what it is. Coming in at number 12 is, of course, actually another installment, though I was surprised at how much more I preferred this. Coming at 12 is Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. Of course, Simon Belmont. But seriously, ever get a chance, I will say the classic early era Castlevania, this game is leagues better than the first game in my opinion. Coming in at 11 is of course an all-time classic, though I would not play this game originally until actually getting it, strangely enough, on the PSP would be the first time I would actually ever play in full this all-time classic. Coming in at 11 is the original classic Final Fantasy 1. Though I would originally first time ever play it actually on the PSP, like I said. Which is a good way to play the game in my opinion. Though I will say if you want to be more old school feel and stuff, this is probably the best route to go to play the original Final Fantasy and just avoid the mobile versions. Or you have the option to get the Final Fantasy Origins on PS1, but I'd say this is a really good route to play the original version. Coming in at number 10 is an all-time classic from, of course, Capcom, which is one of the main game companies I grew up with, game-wise. Capcom, Square, Sega were my three. But with that said, coming in at 10 is Ghosts and Goblins, which is an all-time classic with, of course, obviously, Arthur, as well as, of course, a certain future, very well-known icon, in my opinion, Firebrand, which is a great villain. But Ghosts and Goblins is an all-time classic, and I eventually want to get around to playing the new game for the Switch. But with that said, coming in at number 9 is a true all-time classic, I'm sure. It's not a stranger to pretty much anyone by now. It's iconic status. Coming at 9 is Punch-Out, featuring Mr. Dream. And this is an all-time classic, I will say. Now, this is one of the games I actually played on my friend's original NES. Glad I got to. And at first the game seems hard until once you learn how to actually play the game, which you can say the same for its sort of sequel, Super Punch-Out, on the Super Nintendo. With that said, coming in at number 8 is a game until prior playing this compilation I had never tried. I finally got the track for the first time, and now I understand why so many people praise this game. Yeah, even though until putting this list together, I never played this game, I love it, and I was blown away how much I genuinely enjoyed it. Coming at number 8 is Donkey Kong Jr. I honestly did not know what to expect. I've heard specifically a retro reviewer here on YouTube, or at least one-time review video, so he stopped a few years ago, Lord Carnage, Classic Game Room, but he constantly, occasionally would bring up this game and talk very highly. I'm glad I finally got around to trying the game, and now I finally understand why so many people love this game. It is, in my opinion, leagues above the regular Donkey Kong. Just my opinion, though, just keep in mind. Coming in at number 7 is a game I am glad at least I can say I tried this prior, back in the 2000s when it had a special physical brief release known as the NES Classics, however, line of Game Boy Advance games. I tried this on Game Boy Advance. I much prefer playing it like this, though, I will say. And that is the classic at 7 is Ice Climber. In my opinion, a criminally underrated gem of a NES game. I think it's probably one of the most underrated games on the NES because I barely see many people really talk about this game. I will say after playing it, yeah, it definitely deserves to be at number 7 in the top 10 easily. It is a really fun game. Though I will be first to admit, there are a lot of games that I tend to really enjoy and find really enjoyable that a lot of people don't like for some reason, whatever. But I'm glad actually I learned and tried out Ice Climber because for me, it is a true all-time classic. Coming at number 6 is another all-time classic, which I'm glad at least I got to try this prior many years ago back in the 90s. Coming at number 6 is Mega Man 2. Arguably, probably between Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 4 as my favorite from this specific era of Mega Man. Though I would end up playing most of these classic Mega Man games on, of course, the compilation collection that was released on PS2, like Xbox and GameCube. And it's a great way to play if you're really interested. Not the best way to play, but I'd actually say this is a good way to play Mega Man 2 in my opinion. Coming in at number 5 is the all-time classic, of course, the original The Legend of Zelda. Comes in at number 5. Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. This is arguably one of the, probably of NES games, one of the first games I ever played of NES classics. Glad I did. This would not be the introduction to, though, the Zelda series for me personally. My introduction was on the Super Nintendo with A Link to the Past. But I still love to death the original classic Zelda. Is true all-time great that I recommend anyone play at least once. Coming in at number 4 is a classic, like I already mentioned, that I grew up playing this arcade machine at Pizza Hut a lot. And that is coming in number 4 is the original classic Super Mario Bros. Which is why I was so happy last year when I got my hands on that little Game & Watch model to be able to replay the classic Super Mario Bros. And of course, also 2. That is a great way to play it, in my opinion. Probably the best way. Really, overall, and surprisingly, a really good port. With that said, coming in at number 3, it's going to be a lot of surprise, I'm sure, people. This was another game I played many times at the Pizza Hut, as well as a place I grew up going to a lot when I was a kid, and nice, similar to Chuck E. Cheese, but it was like my local equivalent to Chuck E. Cheese called Billy Bob's Wonderland. But it had a lot of great classic arcade machines, and this was one of them I would play constantly when I went to Billy Bob's. It is called Excite Bike. It's a true all-time classic that I recommend to anyone who has never played a lot of earlier classic sports games. I think it's a must-play for everyone. With that said, number 2 is arguably, in my opinion, an exemption, or the pinnacle of all-time classic arcade games, arcade machines. This is another one I would actually play off and on at local movie theater called Keith Albee back in the day. Awesome. And this is one game I played there, and that is Pac-Man. I would play that, and I would also occasionally play the original classic Virtual Fighter. Coming at number 1, it's an all-time classic that, no matter what, will always be one of my favorite games from Namco, along with Pac-Man. Coming at number 1, this game I've been playing for probably close to 30 years, since I was a kid. Coming at number 1 for me personally, favorite game on the NES Classic Collection, is Galaga. It's a true all-time classic, though I will say I still like Galaxian just a little bit more than Galaga, but that's just me, so to each their own. But yeah, I'm not sure what that says about me, that my 5 favorites are the original Zelda, Super Mario Bros., Excite Bike, Pac-Man, and Galaga. Other than I grew up on classic arcade games, and I'm glad I did get to grow up on 8 and 16-bit classic arcade machines. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. And stay tuned in the future for one of these on ranking the NES, or rather the Super Nintendo Classic, since I definitely have more nostalgia involved specifically with that console than for this one. But anyways, I'll see y'all next time. Hopefully you enjoyed the retro wave music in the background. And I'll see y'all soon enough, and have a good holiday season. We're less than a week away now from Christmas and Yule. Hard to believe, but I'll see y'all soon enough.